welcome everybody. It's time once again for the next chapter with Charlie Hedges as he explores turning the page on his life and yours. Hey, Charlie.
Hi, Paul. You know, it is going to be a delight to be on the show today because I came into studio all prepared. I had a guest set. I had all of my questions, and my guest had some kind of trouble, and we just found out when we walked in the show that he's not going to be on the show. And so we had a choice that we don't do the show or we try a really radical sort of ad-lib show. And naturally, as you might guess, I called my dear friend Terry Hershey and said, Hersh, do you want to just go and riff? You know, we will just kind of play off each other and see what happens. And I think it might be interesting for our audience to see. Terry and I typically riff, but we have a direction. This is almost directionless. So who knows? I have no idea what we're going to talk about, and I have no idea if we can even air it, if the FCA or whatever will allow our language. You know what I'm thinking? I was going to write a blog, and I didn't write it, and there's a quote by my next to right at the top of my favorite podcast host, Krista Tippett. She's been doing it forever, and she is the brilliant conversationalist and interviewer. And I listened to her, and she made a statement that really meant something to me. She says, we plan and things go wrong. Life just never goes according to plans. You know, they may on a high level, but all of the details, you can't anticipate what's going to go on. And you said something about life taking a left turn, didn't you, Harry? Or Harry? Harry? Hey, Harry, are you there?
Yeah, Prince. Call me Prince if you're going to call me Harry.
Well, if you're married to Megan, I don't care for Megan, but I watch Suits, and I think she's hot. So, yeah. You know, I can live with that.
Life takes a left turn. Yeah, I've used that phrase a lot in my writing. I mean, I don't know who came up with it. I mean, somebody did sometime, but yeah.
So, what do you do in a situation like that? Have you ever had to, I mean, you've had hundreds, maybe thousands, I don't know, hundreds of speaking engagements. Have you ever gone up and lost your notes were irrelevant, or whatever, and you just had to do a speech from scratch?
Yeah. Well, the honest answer to that is I'm glad you called me to do this show. And the real honest answer is, did you call me to do this show? I was busy. Now my life is turned out.
Well, and you're writing a Sabbath moment for tomorrow, right?
Yeah, and I'm writing a Sabbath moment, and the answer, of course, to that is yes. Of course, I'm talking off the top of my head now, but you know what's interesting is I asked, Yo-Yo Ma. He's not bad at his craft, right?
Right.
You think anything is going to go right with Yo-Yo Ma. So they said, I mean, is there any time you ever get just panicky or nervous on stage? I said, every time I go up to play. They said, well, what happens? He said, everything settles down as soon as I make my first mistake. Okay, I'm in my own skin now. In other words, there's no script here I have to follow. Perfection script. It should be this script. We need to go this way script. I'm Yo-Yo Ma doing what I do.
You know, it kind of reminds me a bit of my, I don't know how it reminds me, but it came to mind. Let's just say that. It doesn't remind me, but it came to mind that, as many listeners know, I just, my son just won the World Series with the Rangers, and I was in Texas, in Houston, Dallas, and then in Arizona for the World Series, but I was at the ALC playoffs, the American League Division playoffs. You know what I noticed? That before the game, and this comes from my several years, I had probably 8 to 10 years in coaching from 8 years old to 16 years old. And there comes a time that before the game, before the big game, there's a sense of intensity and a sense of emotion, and you're kind of on your edge. But I'll tell you, when you sit down and the pitcher hits the mound, It's interesting, Terry. I fall into a state of calm that all of those emotions go away, and all it is now I'm thinking strategically, tactically, what do we need to do? I don't take, if they get a home run or two, I don't get, what are we going to do now? I just say, okay, now it's interesting that many times, have you found this many times in a state of, this is not necessarily crisis, but in a stage of unknown, it's like public speaking. When you walk on a stage, I don't know about you if you get nervous, but most people get a little bit nervous before walking on a stage.
If you're real, yes.
But when I walk on a stage and I see the 100, 500, 1,000 people out there, I am this is where I'm supposed to be. It is calm. I'm not nervous. I just say, this is what I do. I deliver in that. Do you get that same kind of feeling?
Yeah, but back to your question about when life turns left. In other words, we make it about what's outside of us, life turning left. In other words, so we think the navigation part is key skill. No, it's back to I am the one in the life that's turning left. If I'm grounded in my own skin, I have choices now in this left turning life. I have a place of calm in this left turning life.
Yeah.
Here's the story that came to my mind from the question you just asked me a minute ago. I'm going to read this story to you. Hold it up. Ready? Jacob, almost 70, finds himself in the mid-stages of Alzheimer's. 20 years a clinical psychologist and mediator, Jacob is now acutely aware his faculties are deteriorating. On occasion, his mind and recall are totally blank. Time he needs help to rudimentary physical tasks, okay? Even so, Jacob's spirit does not break. Retreat with Tara Brock. Jacob is asked, how can you be so accepting toward your disease? He said simply because it doesn't feel like anything is wrong. I feel grief and fear about it all going, but it doesn't feel like real life. Then he tells this story about an experience at an event he told Tara. He had the early stages of disease when he traveled and gave talks about Buddhism. Anyway, it's like all these people out there waiting, eager, alert, gathered. Looks out, he doesn't know what to say or do. He's just frozen on the stage. He's lost. It's like, my God. He didn't even know I was there, so his heart's pounding, his mind's spinning. He just put his palms together, and he closes his eyes, and he just names out loud, into the microphone, out loud. It's happening inside. Afraid, embarrassed, confused, in like unfailing power, shaking, sense of dying, sinking, lost. He relaxed, in his head, and he apologized to the audience. In other words, he said, I'm sorry. I should have handled this better. The students were in tears because they said, no one has ever taught us like this. But I own it. Here's where I am. I bring this one. This is the me I bring to this moment. Now I can choose. I can make choices from this.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be apologetic.
But yeah, it's the 100% key. So we assume if we have the wrong, that whatever the response is, the inadequate thing, we have to apologize. No. And the choice is about which me I bring to this moment, rather than how I, quote, navigate. We grew up, well, kind of, because we've talked about this in the past. I grew up in a theology where I had to have everything
neat and tidy, all wrapped up and all clean.
And of course, God was a part of the neat and tidy, so you had to, and if it wasn't neat and tidy, whose fault was it? Was it God's? Hell no. Mine. Then you bring shame to the whole thing. There's no wonder we can't move forward.
You know what strikes me, Hirsch? I have this real aversion to blame. I think blame is a bad word. I just don't think it's so, someone even blames. Someone made a mistake, if they did it intentionally, it's a whole different story. But, it's not done out of intention. It's done out of typically good intent or expedient intent, something that's important. And yet something goes wrong, and this person gets blamed for it going wrong, and then guilt is put on this person, and it should be, this is Krista Tippett is right. We plan and life goes wrong. I was journaling today or yesterday, And I was thinking about the continuum of life and how few things we actually control. We like to think we are in some kind of control, at least some kind of influence in our life. But if you had 100 pieces of stimuli, and you probably have 10,000 pieces of stimuli a day, I don't know. But if you had 100 pieces of stimuli and choices, and of the stimuli, some of it is predetermined by you. Do you know how small that number is that you actually are determined by you? Life happens, and Viktor Frankl is bang on. It is not what you do about life happening. It's about what you do experiencing that, and how you live through it, and how you make decisions. And so,
but you still have the capacity to choose.
Absolutely. You know,
the capacity to choose. And I mean, we found, we not that long ago in our life, in our world, we found that COVID, life turned left. And so there were a lot of people who decided, okay, pick and choose what we do and say. A lot of people decided to do the blame thing.
Yeah.
Their fault. As soon as you do the blame thing, you become a victim of life. As soon as you're a victim, at the mercy of, you've given up your capacity.
And the strange thing about this victimhood thing, the thing that we feel victim about, frequently is our greatest opportunity for learning. It's when things go wrong.
Not just learning, but 100%. Learning, embracing, accepting in a sense of, okay, yes, that's real. Then honoring the fact that I have the capacity now to choose here. Is it an easy choice? No. Let's go talk to the people in Palestine and Israel.
Oh, jeez. Yeah.
I mean, but my point is, there are several places where life has turned dramatically left. So how do I choose there? Well, you called me, and I was writing my Sabbath moment. Ready for what I had written, literally the sentence I had written in my Sabbath moment when you called me?
I don't know. I want to hear. It sounds like it's going to be too serendipitous.
It's not about selling my book. It's a different sentence. This is the sentence I was writing when you called me. You ready? You cannot fight all the world. You can make your own small corner of the world a life-giving and healing place.
I so love that. I so agree with that. I'm frequently in the habit of writing in my purview of what I want to do in life. I never say I want to impact the world. I want to impact my world, because I know I'm not going to impact the world, for crying out loud. I'm just a guy in Orange County. But I do have a world. Each of us do have a world. And that is the world that we impact.
Yes, and I would say to your question, when life turns left, start with what you just said there. Okay, each of us do have a world. When I think of life turning left, I think of the bigger life, bigger than me, or I have no control. I have to start with your statement. You do have a world.
And you used a word that is one of my, it's probably one of my top 10 words in my sort of practical, theological, existential way, and that's choice. That is the one thing we have, is a choice. And we choose how these things impact us. It would have been easy just to call off the podcast and say we'll just produce something different. And I'm in studio, I'm mic'd up, got my headphones on, got producer Paul punching buttons, doing what he's doing. And so I said, how fun to do an experiment. How fun to do something completely different. So tell me, now I want to go off to philosophy. And there is a time, Terry, I think it's a free open podcast. I'm really going to take a different direction here. You're an extraordinarily private person. People think you're vulnerable. You are. But you are a very private person. You choose to whom you reveal your vulnerability. And I know there's a lot of things, a lot of aspects of Terry Hershey that are so admirable. and so attractive and congenial. What would you say, not your close listeners, but, I mean, people that have become your friends, but listeners that are utterly devoted to you, and they have heard you give dozens of speeches and tell dozens of personal stories. I mean, you're brilliant at that, and yet there is a side of Terry Hershey that none of them have any idea about. What is that side of Terry Hershey that you would feel free to reveal to your listeners? What is it about? What is the genius of Terry that you don't talk about?
Well, it's been good talking to you today, Charlie.
See, I know. Yeah, you don't. You're very private. You're an extraordinarily private individual.
As are most people, in a way that is a part of you that either don't see it, own it, and or you don't want to put it out there because you're afraid of what happens to it. And that's okay for that part of you. And the key is, are you willing to embrace it? Are you willing to say that part of me is okay? The thing about, and just saying parts of me would be an interesting dynamic, because I remember not that long ago, maybe 5, 6 years ago, 7 years ago, when I finally started talking about depression, my own wrestling with depression, Sabbath moment. Never admitted, I mean, it's been part of my life all my life. And
yeah, you and I have talked about it for forever.
I never admitted it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I started talking about it. And so the deal was, and then there's choices to make, but the freedom to talk about it was embraced that part of me, and I wasn't shamed by it, did not own me. Therefore, I could make choices leading to I could then therefore talk about it. Some people take some personal things in their life and they put it out there, not necessarily to reveal themselves, but simply to dock or attention or whatever.
Yeah, it's a show issue. You know, that's the American way is showing our mistakes and our vulnerabilities.
You wouldn't believe the crap in my life, etc. So, thing about that is there's always that one thing I try to write about whenever I write about Sabbath moment is there's still that. This goes back to the kind of God I was told to believe in. There's still that boy sees that God no different than an alcoholic. And so you live with that. And when you get out from under that shadow, briefly, for those moments, and then you can be forthright, you can be honest. Oh, wait a minute, what's the word we used at the beginning of the show? You can choose. Who can choose? Not a product of this.
Consistent with who you are internally. Consistent with your authentic self, who you are in your own skin. You can make choices with regard to that.
Yes, and I can make that difference in my own small world. And I don't listen to that. I have to pretend to be someone else, and I have to perform, and I have to do whatever. When I finally am able to embrace that part of me, it can be like Jacob, the guy I wrote about earlier. I can say, okay, this is really who I am. And but, however, I can give you this. This is what I can give you.
You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to write a blog on the Terry Hershey that no one knows. That I wouldn't publish because it's private, and you're a private person, and I honor that. But I do want to let readers or listeners, because you'll post this on your network, and you are thoughtful. You're a dear. You have dear friends. I think you have a lot of acquaintances, but I think you have a very small handful of friends, and you're totally loyal to them, taking care of them, honoring them. You love your relationship. Like this. You love your relationship with them, and producer Paul said this is an example of how you right away knew that your friend was caught between a rock and a hard place. And you said, I'll stop writing my blog and I do this. But your care and your love, and do you know what I do appreciate? as I am growing older in my theology, you have an extraordinary mature Christian theology that I think is truly, as much as you, because you've been so disappointed, frustrated, disillusioned with, the fundamentalists, the evangelical, the casting things down your throat and not allowing you to think and not allowing you to have intimacy and relationship. And you've been into intimacy and relationship long before it was, the mystics, in the last decade have become very popular. And you were in that camp long ago. You were in that camp back in seminary, weren't you? I mean, so that would have been how many years ago, Terry? 30 years ago or so?
Yeah, well, I graduated seminary in 77.
Yeah, so a lot of years ago, 40 years ago. You were monastery retreats, you were studying mysticism, and as much as I've studied it, I don't think I really realized how big of that relational intimacy with God was the key aspect in your, if I may say, religion, in your...
I don't like to call it religion either, but yeah. You're being at home in your own skin.
But what gave you that different, you were raised fundamentalist, we both were of a group that rejected fundamentalism, but honored the basics of the faith, and even that was too regimented for you. It wasn't for me yet because I was new, but as I've grown, I've grown right into your camp. And what do you think was a turning point for you to see relationship with the divine is so much more important than transactional?
Great question. And the fact is, it's a process over time. But it's interesting that the way religion was for us was taught in such a way that can be sort of arranged and organized and, quote, understood in the sense that, okay, that belongs here. So, in other words, life never turns left, and if it does, then there's a reason, etc.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I did something wrong, or God was trying to teach me something.
Exactly, or God was teaching me a lesson. I'm thinking, the hell? Because I was not able to be comfortable in my own skin. For me, I call it my theology now, but the word is grace. I mean, grace. It's the sustaining thing that allows me to be home in my own skin, because there's a DNA, this little light of mine, still alive and well there, invited to make that place in this world.
You did. What was it, a conscious choice, or was it something that? What was it, a choice, or was it just an evolution, and then you decided to align yourself with this evolution, or did it come from such frustration of seeing the paucity, the failure of fundamentalist religion to create anything that would truly resemble the divine, except, not dancing or going out with girls that do. I mean, just all of these transactional crazy moments that you're able to see something so much deeper that I think is really important. And for starters, the word you used, paucity, is an awesome word. Oh,
good job. It actually was
I got a gold star.
No, that's my friend Charles. He used the word paucity. The absolute lack of paucity, and the paucity of the theological learning we had, because all it did was harden me and make me more freaked out. Back to our topic, when life turns left, the paucity of the faith I believed in was such that I'm freaking out now that life turns left, and I better get this right or else.
Yeah, you have to set it right rather than living with the upside downness and knowing that is the way things are created.
I'm so grateful for the people I started reading and learning from early. I mean, you and I both had the connection to Valiermo, the Benedictine monastery.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so I began, and then other people I read, theologian, his name was Robert Capon, who talked about grace,
Noon until 3.
We live like piano students who are ill-taught. We don't hear the music. We only play the right notes.
Yeah, I've sort of bastardized Capon's phrase there, and the way I phrase it, because I think it's really a bit more catchy, is that we are ill-taught piano students, more concerned with making flubs than making music.
And so the thing is, because as soon as I say when life turns left, I'm thinking, okay, how else am I going to screw up? Am I going to start there? Or I can start with, what choices do I have? Bring light in this small corner of my world, myself who is, okay, messed up, wrecked, whatever, worried, but there's a DNA here that says I have a light to shine. I am in awe of and honored to be in the presence of people who are willing to say and do that about themselves. Could have been in this box or that box, but here's who I am. It is real. And I want to give this to make the world a better place.
Don't you think that's the intent of the divine? Is to make it a better place in light with divine intention, in light with aligning with the personality of God, and that personality of God is love and goodness. And, St. Teresa of Avila, when you're talking about fundamentalist obsession with sin, St. Teresa of Avila said, if you cannot see sin through the eyes of love, then you don't understand sin. And that is so meaningful because it's a rejection, it's a hurt to God. It's not I have a hard time with anger and wrath, although I know that it's there, but I see God as just being more in his wrathful dispositions. It's more of a jilted lover, and he's responding to a jilted lover because that's what it's all about. So I'm just growing into these different areas of God. I want to close with this because we've gone on long enough. I want to close with this with a new thought that I got from, as I read these theologians from 1000 to 1500 AD. Bonaventure wrote in 1250, wrote that we are created not to have potential, but we are potential, not as potential. We are potential. We are created incomplete in the image of God to be filled through our style of life, through work with God, to be filled to the potential that we would, at the end of the path, we would be more like God. That was what God is looking for, is receiving love and giving love, and we would be more like that. And I love this concept that each of us do not have potential, we are potential. And so your listeners and my listeners, I would like to encourage them to know that it's not that you have this potential and you can lose it. You're always in a state of growing. Ilia Delio calls it evolution. I like evolution, not necessarily Darwinian evolution, although, I'm not so much against that, but it is evolution. And if things are in the cosmic, theocentric paradigm, we are always evolving, become closer to God, growing and moving in closer to God. But I like that idea of potential. Does that make any sense to you? I know it's a very deep theological stuff.
Yeah, and the growing part means that it's have the capacity for it. In other words, it's not something you add to your life. It's already at your core.
You are at your core, because that is that striving for that potential is who you are. It's not
it's about learning to embrace it, which is different than learning to add it.
I love that, Hirsch. Why don't we just end our time with embracing the goodness that is available. And I don't know if it was Bonaventure or somebody else that wrote, we are by grace what God is by nature, and God is making us to be more like the entity of God.
Exactly. Let's call it the unveiling.
The unveiling.
Because we cover it up and we're afraid of it, but the capacity is there.
Well, Hirsch, I got to tell you, you are a true friend, and for you to stop, I know the writing of the blog, that means you're going to be late for cooking dinner, and so Nancy's going to be pissed at me. And so, no, she won't be. Nancy's a sweetheart, but she will completely understand.
Never pissed, really. Yeah.
No, she's not. She's not.
You know what? This is interesting because I've never done this on your shows. I have a Bible verse that comes.
Uh-oh. Wait a minute. Let me prepare myself here. I got to put my seatbelts on.
I don't remember. One of Paul's letters. We'll figure it out. But dress in the wardrobe God picked out for you. It's your wardrobe. Compassion, kindness, humility, quiet, strength, and discipline. Regardless of what else you wear love. It's your basic all-purpose garment. Never be without it. It's my favorite verse.
I love that.
I
And
have to look it up, find out where it is. But
yeah, who cares? You know, I mean, be like the writer to the Hebrews. Somewhere it's written. I like that. You know, he doesn't quote any exact verse. He just somewhere it says, and he's quoting Bible.
Yeah.
All right, my friend, you were a delight. Thank you.
Wait, stop! I want to tell you something. This is important. Life turns left. Life turns left. What'd you do? You called a friend. What did friends do? They talk.
I'm silent because I'm as close as I can come to tears.
But I'm just saying.
Yeah.
When life turns left, call a friend. We talk.
Call a friend, and we talk our way through it. Yeah, and you know what's nice? Not a lot of answers, just a lot of discussion and what about and what if, what maybe. Here's what you need to, Charlie. Here's what you need to do, Charlie. You need to read the first 3 chapters of Ephesians, and that will give you all the answers.
Right.
All right, buddy.
Charles.
Love you. Oh, I got to take us out. Oh, yeah. My producer, Paul. Hey, everybody. This is Charlie Hedges. Having a fun time with my friend Terry Hershey, and I'm signing off. And so until next, this is Charlie. Bye for now.